Hey there, YouTube. I'm Ikitsu. This is the Ikitsu Times. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to a little bit of Menace. So I actually did an entire playthrough through the entirety of all the content that they have in Menace up to date. It does sort of like say, it's like, hey, this is the end of the demo. You can keep playing, but you're not getting anything out of it, blah, blah, blah. But so yeah, like I've played through actually a couple times. I really like this game. The fact that it's incomplete has forced me to sort of like go back and play XCOM, which makes me incredibly angry. But fortunately for Menace, it does not make me angry like XCOM does. But what I wanted to do is talk a little bit about this now. Now, I did try to record all of those other videos. In fact, I had recorded them, but the 2 hour long videos that I was doing were not really being processed very well by my video editing software. It did not like those. So I could have either tried to divide them up a little bit, but it sounded weird when I did the lack of intro and outro just really didn't work for me. So here we are doing something else instead, and that's fine. I like this game. I like playing it, so whatever. But yeah, what I want to do is talk a little bit about like onboarding and how early game experiences can really mess with how a game is perceived in sort of the long term. So we're going to take a look at this in terms of like onboarding here. So we got a couple different options at the start here, and basically we're going to end up in a couple different situations. Now, in my personal way of thinking, the way that you're going to see this game being played by especially people who are talking about it online is either going to be normal first, and then they play through it that way and they sort of get the ropes and the basics of it, or they jump into expert. And this is sort of like for, whatever reason. In my particular case, the reason that I always start games on expert difficulty or the hardest difficulty is in a lot of cases, there are games where if you start on the lower level difficulty, you're fundamentally learning skills that are not going to translate over once you end up in the expert difficulty. So if you want to advance to the harder difficulty, it's actually better to just start in the harder difficulty and like struggle and lose over and over and over again until you sort of figure it out, than it is to learn the game on normal difficulty, where you'll pick up a whole bunch of bad habits that are going to stick with you up into those higher difficulties and make it actually harder to get the perspective that you need on the harder difficulty. So that's why I play the hardest difficulty right out of the gate there. There's other reasons for people to start with the harder difficulty, but those are the ones that I think people are going to pick. Challenging might be for some people, but I don't really know who picks challenging as opposed to normal or expert. Those are the ones that I typically see people picking. So let's take a look at how this game develops and why people sort of play the game the way they play it based on their expectations from either normal or expert. So starting off in normal, I'm going to go ahead and just skip through this here, and I'm just going to hit surprise me because that's relatively irrelevant as far as that goes. So at the start of a normal run, you start off with your 3 ammo magazine pouches. You got your light vehicle troop carrier, and you've got your modular vehicle CMG-50 MMG. But in addition to that, you also have a standard CMG-50 for the infantry, and you've also got an L100 PAL. So these are unique weapons that you sort of start off with only on normal difficulty that can add a little bit of extra punch to your squads. Now, there's other infantry special weapons that are in this game, and they're radically different from how the CMG-50 works. But since you start off with this, a lot of people are going to start off by using the CMG-50. And there's some interesting things about this particular gun, mostly in that it's just bad. Like, there's the tripod variant here that we have. It's actually significantly stronger to get the tripod variant. Not only does it have like twice as much ammunition for some reason as the standard CMG-50, but its accuracy is -10 instead of like -20. So you're twice as accurate, or you have half the penalty of the standard CMG-50 if you've got the tripod. Yes, there are mobility issues to using the tripod CMG-50, but it's substantially better. Like, this thing is just so weak for some reason. There's also the fact that we could also get this tripod M6 CMG for 200 supply here. And the tripod M6 CMG is ridiculously powerful. This thing can one-shot units that are just out in the open really, really effectively, really easily. So what you're going to find is that you're going to have these options here, but you're going to have the experience for a new player going into the fight with the CMG-50. So let's take a look at what we're sort of learning as we sort of go through this. So we pick our first mission, we sort of go and set up for this, and we set up our squads for this mission. So we can get our driver. It looks like our squads are Darby, Tech, and Pike, so that's fine. let's go ahead and just sort of throw everything that we can in here. It looks like we still have 259 points even after we add the tank. Okay, that's fine. So we'll go ahead and add in our ammo pouches for all of our infantry. We'll give Tech, of course, the CMG 50. That's the obvious choice as far as that goes. We'll give Darby the L100, and we'll boost everybody's squads up to the maximum possible size. And what we're going to find is we can easily afford to take that and still have some points left over. So you're really not constrained by your supply cap on the lowest difficulty. You're really just taking every single thing that you're capable of taking. And there's an interesting dynamic that happens when you do that. If all of our squads are sort of maxed out rifle squads, what we're going to find is actually, well, let's do it this way. Would probably be better. So what we're going to find is that the person who's doing really, really good damage over the course of the actual fight here is going to be Darby, because she's got really, really high stats here. And the C1A2 SBC with a 9-man squad is about as effective per activation as the CMG 50. They're roughly the same as one another. The advantage of the CMG 50 is that it has the same firepower even if I decide to go for a 2-man squad. So this squad here, which costs way, way, way less, is just as effective at using the CMG 50 as a maxed out squad using the CMG 50. The larger squad, of course, has that sort of extra flexibility of also having the ability to fire the C1A2, but why would you bother at that point taking the CMG 50? Because it takes away one of our rifles from the squadron and only has 6 shots. In addition to that, I have to sort of stop to use it. Not with Tech. If you've got Tech, then he can fire while standing. But with everyone else, you have to sort of deploy, spending 20 action points to sort of set it up, and then you can fire it, and then you have to stand up again, which takes another 20 action points. So you're blowing through a lot of your mobility just to use this thing. So what people are going to sort of learn from this if they're playing on normal difficulty is that the CMG 50 is actually really, really bad. But let's flip this on its head a little bit. What if we had like half of the amount of like deployment points? What if you had significantly less deployment points? Well, all of a sudden, it's really, really expensive to take the Darby squadron, costing us 188 points here. So what we could do is we could drop her down to this. And suddenly, she goes from being 188 points to 109 points, which is still pretty expensive. We could even drop that a little bit lower, 104. But having her with CMG 50, she's just way, way cheaper all of a sudden, making it so that we could potentially afford to take this sort of like force into something like, say, like a 600 supply limit fight would be possible, probably. Maybe not. But you're saving enough points that you can go from being like really, really points constrained to being much better off with your points, as opposed to what we got here, where we can just easily take everything. So what happened if we sort of had, like, again, if we had her like this, we have the exact same firepower from her using the CMG 50 as when she's a 9-man squad using the C1A2. The only thing that's really a problem here is that she only has 6 shots. But that's still really, really good value that you're looking at there. So basically, you're going to go through the first mission. You're going to use the CMG 50. You're going to be very disappointed in its performance relative to the full squad of C1A2s. And you're going to sort of come to the assumption that these weapons aren't really worth it. Like, you're paying a decent amount of points, you're not getting enough ammunition, you're using up a lot of mobility, and you're just getting the same thing as if you fired the rifles. Why wouldn't you just fire the rifles? These things have way more ammunition. They're technically cheaper per gun. And you're capable of getting like a lot of ammunition thanks to the magazine pouches. So what's this for here? Well, the answer is it's for a situation that you aren't going to experience on the lower difficulties. So you're going to end up in a situation that you're going to go to the black market with your ill-gained loot from that first set of missions there, and you're going to be like, okay, well, an upgrade to one of these is going to be like really cheap. I can only afford to get one of these after that first mission, because you don't get paid out very much on the lowest difficulty for your first mission. So you're probably going to pick up one of these guns here, and you're going to go into the next mission with, like, say, the BR3A3, which has got like the longest range out of this type of gun, and you're going to experience a massive increase in firepower based on the fact that you've upgraded to the BR3A3. So at that point in time, you've blown the CMG 50 way out of the water in terms of effectiveness, because this thing is going to be way more effective than the CMG 50, because like I said, it's the same as those other guns that you start off with, the C1A2s. And you're not necessarily going to look at the situation and be like, okay, well, I want to risk spending like way more money than I actually have on a tripod M6 CMG. I, on the other hand, am going to look at the situation. I'm going to say, okay, I need to pool up and save up enough money to get the tripod M6 CMG, because the tripod M6 CMG is competitive to an entire 9-man rifle squad using endgame rifles with match grade ammunition and a accuracy booster. So it's really powerful. The tripod M6 is probably one of the best like all-rounder type weapons in the game, being able to engage everything other than the heaviest of armor. It is ridiculously strong. But it's even got a decent amount of ammunition, honestly, for what it is. So I think that what's happening here is that people are being pushed away from going for the infantry special weapons if they're on the lower difficulties, because they're not going to be able to afford them very easily or effectively during their early bits because they're slowed income. And because of the fact that they're gaining experience with a gun that gives them a false impression of the effectiveness of those types of weapons. Now, I actually think that for what it's worth, the CMG 50 is kind of okay. The bipod mounted one, the basic one, does need to have significantly more ammunition than it currently does. It probably should have 12. But other than that, like, it's actually kind of okay at its role. If you just have a really low cost early game squad, you can sort of get that up and running. But I'm not necessarily going to spend like a whole bunch of time or effort like defending that particular weapon. I do think it's a little bit undertuned for what you're spending for it. But if you're able to get like one of the heavier ones, that's when things really, really take off there. So let's take a look at the alternative though. What if you're playing on the harder difficulties here? So let's go ahead and take a look at expert. And we're just going to go ahead and hit surprise me again here. Probably is actually more important for me to directly select, but whatever, that's fine. So in this particular case, we don't have access to those infantry special weapons. Funny enough, we don't have any in the store, but that's just a luck thing. You can actually start off with infantry special weapons in the store here. But regardless, yeah, the fact that we don't start off with those is putting us into a very different situation in terms of the tools that we've got access to and the way that we're going to advance things, the way we're going to perceive things. If we take a look at our squads here, we've got funny. You know what? I'm going to get rid of this particular start because this is a really weird. This is a really cockeyed start. Okay, we're going to make sure we've actually got a tank. Apparently, when you hit surprise, you can end up without a tank, which is kind of funny. All right, we'll hit confirm there. Okay, yeah, so we got access to some infantry special weapons here. The grenade launcher would actually be kind of good here. But yeah, so what we look at when we're trying to deploy for this particular start here as opposed to that other one, well, our starting deployment is going to be very, very different here. In this particular case, we can start off with our vehicle, add that to the mission, and you're going to see we don't have very many points to play with here. We could go for a maxed out Carta squad because that's actually very, very cost efficient. Then we can go ahead and add some more to like Darby here and get her up to maximum, but we've got Lim at a very sort of small squad size. To the point where I don't necessarily want to give him an ammo pack potentially, and he can just sort of support our vehicle as a little bit of fire support there. So this is like all we can afford here. This would be a situation where if we had access to it, getting a squad special weapon would actually be really, really good because then we could just have like one of our squads, and it would probably make the most sense to pick like Darby, give her that MMG, drop her down to a 2-man squad, and then have everybody maxed out. That would give us the same firepower as a 9-man squad with C1A2s, and would still give us that sort of flexibility of having 2 full-size rifle squads as well. So we could have the best of sort of both worlds in that kind of case there. And yeah, that would be a sort of lesson that you can get a lot more firepower out of a smaller pool of points and a smaller pool of manpower if you have access to those weapons. But you don't have access to those weapons. The other thing here is that we're going to sort of find that because we're sort of pushing through this, and this first mission is going to be really, really difficult. The C1A2 is not really up to spec for fighting in a situation where you're on the harder difficulties. It's really, really rough getting through this very, very first mission. we're going to be looking for like immediate answers. And unless we get really lucky with their infantry special draws, we're not going to be looking at getting those. You're going to be looking at getting like an infantry weapon so that you can give like a maximum size Derby squad, like the R14A2, or you're maybe going to go for the R10A6, or maybe you go for the BR3A3. I think that the BR3A3 is actually kind of the worst if you're fighting into bugs. I would much rather have the R14 in that particular case, but regardless of which one you end up picking, you're going to end up getting a massive upswing in sort of power for that one unit at the expense of everybody else, because suddenly you can't really afford to take anything else. But you'll sort of think that once you've got everybody equipped with something like the BR3A3, that you're going to be in a much easier position, and to a certain extent you will. But the reality is, if you saved up and picked up a 50 cal, you would actually be able to have that sort of smaller squad and have it punch way above a 9-man squad with the BR3A3. And as a result of that, you'd be pushing way ahead by focusing on getting infantry special weapons, getting like two of those, and then after that, you maybe get like one squad with a like BR3A3, or you get access to like the R14 or whatever it is you end up getting. Um, but there's so much friction that makes it so that that feels like it's the bad choice in the harder difficulties that's going to be quite often unintuitive to go for that route of getting infantry special weapons. So I think that that's sort of what's happening there, is that you get through that first mission and you've been taught that you can use that rifle fire to get through those missions, and that maybe you don't need to get those infantry special weapons. And as you sort of start scaling up and you start getting access to more and more points, you get more supplies, you continue along, it's going to not necessarily occur to you that the best way when you're playing this on this difficulty is to get more squads. And the reason you're not going to think about that is because, well, look, we can't even afford to take all the squads that we have. And if you're playing with the assumption that increasing the number of rifles that you have is how you increase the damage potential that you have, it's really going to be like once you've got all four of your squads maxed out with the best rifle, with the best like equipment, with some promotions, that's when you're going to start thinking about getting new squadrons. Whereas if you're thinking about it in terms of getting minimum size squads with special weapons, you're going to be free on supply really quickly. So the process that you have to go through to think that you want to go and get a lot of additional infantry special weapons is you have to start buying dossiers, which don't immediately make you more powerful. You have to lose a whole bunch of authority to go through hiring it. You have to buy the infantry special weapons, which are very expensive in barter. And because you're expending all of that, it feels like you're spending way more on getting those infantry specials onto the field, and you are. It's a big investment. It's a lot of points that you're spending into that. However, like, what else would you really be spending it on? It doesn't take that long for you to cap out your infantry weapons for your three squads. So at that point in time, a lot of times people will look at like infantry accessories or ammunition add-ons, or access to like the ammo bags for the vehicles or something like that, vehicle ammo cases. Maybe they think about saving up to get a medium mech or something like that, but you'll have enough points to get those once you get to that stage of the game, especially on the higher difficulties, because you get way more money more quickly. So I think that people are sort of like looking at it, but they can't really piece together all the different things that you need to get to focus on getting the infantry special weapons and make them really viable. Because again, what you need to be doing is you need to be hiring lots of people, and you need to be getting a lot of the infantry special weapons, and you need to be reducing your squads so you don't really care about the infantry weapons. You actually kind of need to be using pirate pipe guns to really maximize the effect of this, because they're the cheapest gun in the game, even cheaper than anything that you start with. Like, all this is sort of unintuitive, and it's way less sort of it's a way more difficult thing to come to than simply just giving yourself more infantry weapons. And again, like, the CMG 50 is only kind of okay. Like, it's perfectly fine, but it's not great. The thing is, you have to also know which infantry special weapons are really good. We can take a look at one of my other files here real quick here. And we're just going to go into this. Okay, so we can take a look at our black market here and see what we've got available. So for like infantry specials, like we got like the anti-material rifle, the crocodile, and like that's fine. It's not an amazing gun, but it's got its uses. It's not that bad. There's the flamethrowers; those have their uses. They're not bad, but neither of these are great. You got the designated marksman rifle, the KSAS DMR. That one's fine. It can do some certain things. There's some fun things you can do with the EMP rifle. The chain gun has got some interesting stuff going on. The workshopped RPG and the IMX SA RPG, those things are fine as well. But none of these are really like amazing or anything like that. These are all things that are situational, and you can pick them and you can do stuff with them. But I wouldn't like say that any of these are brilliant per se. By contrast, the stuff that we've actually got equipped here, we got the like E4A2 Elsa. There's some really fun things you can do with that one. We got a bunch of tripod M6 CMGs, again, the most powerful sort of gun in the game, in my opinion. You got the tripod MK20A3. This one's a pretty strong sort of anti-light vehicle that can still put the hurt on infantry. The problem with it is it only fires 3 rounds, so you're only really getting 1 person per shot. So if you're up against a 9-man squad, this is going to take like 3 shots minimum to kill it, and probably going to take more if you don't have really, really good accuracy with your gunner. But it will down those 3 people if it hits 3 people. Like, it's no question about that. The thing about this is it can chew through light vehicles pretty effectively compared to the 50 cal. We got access to the MK9 Mod 2K GMW, the automatic grenade launcher. This thing really wipes out like lighter infantry squads super, super effectively. Even heavier infantry goes down pretty quickly to it. Pretty much only really great on Saijin. Other people can take it, but like it's really, really good on her. We got access to another of those autocannons. And I think that's basically like what we're really using there. We've also got a Xantec GM2 ATGM launcher. This thing's fantastic against vehicles. Give it to Carta. She'll be able to fire off 6 of them without even taking an ammo pack. But they basically can one-shot most sort of lighter vehicles, not the heavy tank. I think it's just shy unless you've got the right abilities into the medium walkers as well. But you can really lay the hurt on anything that's a vehicle with this thing. Auto killing a lot of things that are out there, and making it so that even if you don't kill the heavy tank in a single hit with this, it does damage it so heavily that it's functionally out of the fight, typically speaking. Having to like put out a fire and do some other stuff, making it so that it can't actually fire its gun, which is really all you care about being able to do, making it so it can't fire its gun. And if you can hit it with 2 of these, it does kill the heavy tank, typically speaking. So yeah, there are fantastic weapons, but like you have to sort of know which ones to focus on and who to give it to. Although, you don't have to really give it to much. You also have to suffer through a few things here. Now, typically speaking, for like the tripod weapons there, I like to give athletic and buff to everybody who's carrying those, and that's really all you need. That's basically everything that you need for a heavy weapon squadron. You can add more to it, but if you've got like the tripod M6 CMG, that's gonna still wipe out a squad even if you don't have any like big accuracy or damage boost or something like that. Adding in those extra abilities like just is a bit superfluous and something that should be sort of cheap and sort of efficient there. And like the nice thing about this is you're saving so many points by going this route that you can still take a big rifle squad if you want to, especially if you've got someone like Sachin. He really does not benefit from taking any of these infantry special weapons. He's absolutely somebody that should be taking just a big expensive rifle, using a maximum size squad, getting that strength and numbers bonus there, getting the discount on the guns with the "this is my rifle" perk. So like there are exceptions to what I'm talking about here. There are instances where, well, that's not true. Like the thing about Sachin is he still does less damage with this sort of like rifle setup here, and he does still cost more than something like say Carta does with her autocannon, or even more relevantly, somebody like say Tech with his tripod M6. Like this is way way stronger a combination than Sachin is, and it's for less points. So like even though this is like kind of the best way to play him in particular, I do think that like yeah, it's just really hard to beat this kind of setup here. So yeah, that's kind of how the way that this game onboards you kind of convinces people to take certain types of compositions and gives them the sort of impressions that they've got about this game. I think that to a certain extent, one of the things that they could be doing is giving starting packages. Because I don't see any particular reason why you should actually start the game from nothing. I think that that's actually super, super boring. How you always start off games like this with just the most bare bones basic stuff. Like, there's no particular reason why it should be this limiting in what you're capable of taking at the start. And I think the best way to do that would be, you take your squads and then you select a few starting packages, and maybe you start off with like way less manpower. Instead of having 28 free squaddies at the start, you start off with like six free squaddies or something like that, so that each of your three squadrons of infantry can start off with two extra squaddies. And to take like a rifle group, like if you want, you could get like a slightly better rifle and it gives you like an extra eight squaddies or something like that, giving you the ability to have those larger groups, and you get like a slightly better rifle. Maybe you give like a new version of the carbine that's just a little bit better than the baseline carbine. But you could also have another one that gives you access to like a CMG 50, or something sort of similar to that in the harder difficulties or whatever. And maybe it gives you like a CMG 50 and an ammo bag for the CMG 50, so you could start off with like, I do think it needs to be buffed up to 12 shots. So you'd be able to have like an 18 shot CMG 50 in that particular sort of composition there, and so on and so forth. Like, you'd have a bunch of different packages. Maybe you have like an assault packages that gives you like the PDW or a submachine gun and like two extra squaddies, and you could have like a 5-man squad of like people with submachine guns that are capable of doing clearing out of a vehicle or something like that. And I would make it so that it's not even tied to like the specific squad leaders, so you can experiment with like combining them with different people. But I think that this would teach people that there's more variety in how you can play the game, and how those different varieties have different costs and different effectiveness based on what they do. And encourage people to experiment more in the early game, instead of just grabbing the BR3A3 as fast as they can and just maxing out their squad size and having a go that way. I don't know. I think that there's some elements to the way that this game onboards you that directs you to that style of play that's causing people to get caught up in believing that that's the best way to play it. But I definitely think that it isn't. But in any event, though, that's going to be our video for today. I hope you found this one enjoyable. And of course, as always, hope to see you guys all next time.